My life has never felt like it belonged to me. From as far back as I can remember, I lived in the shadow of my younger sister, Isabel. Please stay with me as I tell you my story. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel, for your support means the world to us. Now back to my story. I was the first daughter, the one who should have been cherished, the one who should have known what a mother's love felt like. But in my mother's eyes, I was nothing more than a reminder of something she hated. I tried, oh how I tried, to win her affection. I brought home perfect test scores, painted pictures with my tiny hands, even stood on tiptoe to help her in the kitchen. But her smile was never for me. It was always for Isabel, the golden child, the daughter she adored. Birthdays were the cruelest reminder. When Isabel turned 6, the house overflowed with balloons, music, and a glittering cake taller than her. But when I turned 10, all I got was a plain cupcake with no candle. My mother brushed me off with, "You're older now, you don't need all that fuss." But deep down, I knew the truth. She just didn't care. At night, I lay in bed listening to her soft lullabies as she tucked Isabel in. I would pull the blanket over my head, trying to block out the sound. She never sang to me, not once. To the world, we looked like the perfect family, a proud mother and her 2 daughters. Neighbors often told me how lucky I was. I smiled back, but inside I was crumbling, because I knew something they didn't. Perfection was just a mask. And one day, I would discover the terrifying reason why I was never the daughter she chose. Growing up, it was the little things that cut me the deepest, not the grand betrayals, but the everyday choices that showed me exactly where I stood. When Isabel and I came home from school, she was always greeted with open arms, her hair smoothed down, her day carefully listened to. When it was my turn to speak, my mother's eyes drifted elsewhere, to the stove, to the window, anywhere but me. I learned to keep my words inside. Dinner was no different. Isabel's plate always had the biggest portion, the juiciest piece of meat, the slice of cake with the extra frosting. Mine barely enough to fill me. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I wasn't worth as much food. But then I saw the way my mother's eyes softened as she placed Isabel's plate in front of her, and the way her expression hardened when it was my turn. It wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. Even school achievements couldn't save me. When Isabel won a small art prize, my mother hung her drawing proudly on the wall for everyone to see. When I brought home the award for topping my class, she glanced at the certificate and said, "Don't brag, no one likes a show-off." The pain didn't just live in those moments. It followed me everywhere. I began to shrink, to fold myself smaller, thinking that maybe if I stayed quiet enough, invisible enough, she wouldn't find new ways to remind me I was unwanted. But every wound, every little slight, was carving something into me. A question I couldn't ignore. Why did she despise me so much? I didn't know it yet, but the answer would tear my world apart. It was a night I'll never forget. Rain tapped against my bedroom window, and the house was quieter than usual. Isabel had fallen asleep early, her soft breathing filling the space between the walls. I crept into the hallway, tiptoeing toward the kitchen for a glass of water. That's when I heard it. My mother's voice, low, sharp, almost venomous. She was speaking to our neighbor through the open back door. I froze in the shadows, my heart pounding so loudly I thought she might hear me. "She reminds me too much of her father," my mother hissed. "Every time I look at her, I see him. I'll never forgive her for that mistake." Her words stabbed through me, each one sharper than the last. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I wanted to step out, to ask her what she meant, to beg her to stop, but my legs felt like stone. The neighbor murmured something I couldn't catch, and then I heard my mother's bitter laugh. "She was never meant to be mine. Isabel is the only one worth my love." I stumbled back to my room, clutching the glass of water as if it could steady me. But nothing could. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every cold look, every harsh word, every moment I had been ignored. Suddenly, it all made sense. I wasn't unloved because of who I was. I was unloved because of who I reminded her of. And as that truth sank into me, another question burned. What mistake had my father made that condemned me to this life? After that night, I began to notice things I hadn't seen before. My mother didn't just favor Isabel, she shaped the way Isabel saw me. Subtle comments, whispered warnings, and half-truths slipped into everyday conversations, until my own sister began to doubt me. When I tried to sit beside Isabel, my mother would say, "Don't let Clara drag you down, she's always jealous." If I reached for Isabel's hand, she would pull her closer and murmur, "Be careful, she only wants what you have." At first, Isabel resisted. She was gentle by nature, her heart too soft to see me as a threat. But over time, I saw her start to hesitate around me. She stopped sharing her secrets, stopped running into my room at night with giggles and stories. Her laughter became something I could only hear from the other side of the door. The bond we once had began to unravel thread by thread, replaced by distance I couldn't mend. I wanted to shout, to tell Isabel it wasn't true, that I wasn't her enemy, but every time I opened my mouth, my mother's shadow loomed between us. One evening, Isabel confronted me with tears in her eyes. "Why do you always try to take what's mine? Mother says you can't stand me." Her words pierced me. I wanted to grab her shoulders and scream that it was all a lie, that I loved her more than anything. But she pulled away before I could speak, her small frame disappearing into my mother's waiting arms. That night, as I listened to their muffled laughter from down the hall, I realized something chilling. My mother wasn't content to simply withhold her love. She wanted to erase me, and she was using my sister to do it. The storm that night was fierce, thunder shaking the walls, rain hammering against the glass like fists. We sat at the dinner table in silence, the air heavy, the stew steaming in the middle of the table. Isabel hummed softly, oblivious, while my mother's spoon clinked against her bowl in steady rhythm. I couldn't take it anymore. The words I had held back for years burned inside me, fighting their way out. My hands trembled as I set down my fork. "Why do you hate me?" I asked, my voice barely louder than the rain outside. The clinking stopped. My mother's spoon froze midair. Isabel's humming died instantly, her wide eyes darting between us. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then my mother slowly lowered her spoon, her gaze locking on me with an intensity that made my stomach twist. "You really want to know?" she asked coldly. I nodded, my throat tight. Her lips curled into something between a smile and a sneer. "Because you are not mine." The words struck like lightning. My breath caught, not hers. What did she mean? She leaned forward, her voice sharp as a blade. "Every time I look at you, I see him. You were his mistake, not mine. I raised you because I had no choice. But you never belonged to me." The room spun, my chest felt hollow, like my very existence had been ripped away. Isabel's fork clattered to her plate, her small voice breaking. "Mother, what are you saying?" But my mother didn't look at her. She kept her eyes fixed on me, unblinking, as though she wanted her words to carve themselves into my skin. That night, the truth shattered everything I thought I knew. Her words echoed in my head long after they were spoken. "You are not mine." I sat frozen at the table, staring at the woman who had raised me but never loved me. My hands were cold, my chest tight, as if the air itself had abandoned me too. "What do you mean?" I whispered, my voice trembling. My mother's eyes hardened, sharp as glass. "You're his child, not mine. Every look, every breath, every stubborn tilt of your chin, him. You remind me of everything I wish I could erase." Her voice dripped with contempt, each word slicing deeper than any knife could. Beside me, Isabel shook her head. "That's not true. Tell me it's not true," she pleaded, looking at me as if I could somehow undo what had just been said. But I couldn't. My silence was its own answer. I thought of every moment I had spent chasing scraps of her affection, every smile I had worked for, every time I convinced myself that if I was good enough, she would love me. And now I knew the truth. I had been fighting a battle I could never win. Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to let them fall in front of her. I stood from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. Isabel reached for me, but I pulled away, my legs carrying me toward my room, as though they no longer belonged to me. Behind me, my mother's voice followed, colder than the storm outside. "You were never meant to belong here, Clara. Remember that." The door to my room closed with a finality that shook me. And in that suffocating silence, I realized something terrifying. My life had never been built on love, only on lies. The days after that storm felt heavier than ever. I moved through the house like a ghost, my mother's words replaying in my mind. "You were never meant to belong here." But something had changed. Isabel's eyes followed me differently now. Gone was the blind certainty that she was the chosen one, the golden child. Instead, there was hesitation and fear. One evening, she crept into my room. For the first time in years, she sat on my bed like she used to when we were little, her hands twisted nervously in her lap. "Clara," she whispered, "what mother said, do you believe it?" My throat tightened. I wanted to protect her, to say no, to tell her it was all some terrible misunderstanding. But I couldn't lie. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I feel it's true. I've always felt it." Her eyes shimmered with tears. "She's not the same with me either. Clara, she holds me so close. But sometimes it feels like chains. Like she loves me too much, almost to control me." Hearing Isabel say those words made my chest ache. All this time, I had thought she was blind to our mother's cruelty, but maybe she was trapped in a different way, smothered by a love that wasn't love at all, just possession. We sat in silence, the distance between us shrinking for the first time in years. For once, she wasn't the chosen daughter, and I wasn't the forgotten one. We were just two sisters caught in the web of a woman who had twisted love into a weapon. But even as Isabel leaned against me, I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't heard the worst of our mother's secrets yet. The questions wouldn't leave me alone. Every word my mother spat at me haunted my sleep. "You're his child, not mine." What did it mean? And why did she speak with such venom? I knew the answers weren't going to come from her lips, not willingly, so I searched for them myself. One afternoon when the house was empty, I slipped into her room. The air smelled of her perfume, sharp and suffocating. My hands trembled as I pulled open drawers, rifling through boxes she thought were hidden. At the bottom of a wooden chest, I found them, faded photographs, letters tied in a brittle ribbon, and a birth certificate that made my blood run cold. My name, my father's name, but under mother. The space was different, another name, not hers. I staggered back, the papers trembling in my hands. My whole life, every moment of rejection, every cold glance, suddenly made sense. She hadn't just hated me because I reminded her of my father. She hated me because I wasn't hers at all. But that wasn't the only secret. Among the letters was something that made my heart stop. Isabel's birth records, different dates, a different signature, and scribbled across the corner in my mother's handwriting, "He can never know." My breath caught. Isabel wasn't hers either. We both had been living in a house built on lies, smothered by favoritism that was never real love, just a shield for her guilt. When Isabel found me clutching the papers, tears streaming down my face, I could barely speak. "We're not who we think we are," I whispered, "neither of us." Her face turned white, and for the first time, I saw fear not of me, not of jealousy, but of the truth. I left that night, with the documents hidden under my clothes. I couldn't breathe in that house anymore, not with the lies pressing against the walls, not with the weight of a mother who was never mine. Years passed before I found the courage to return. By then, I was no longer the timid girl who begged for scraps of affection. I had built a life of my own, far away from her shadow, but the truth never left me. It sat like fire in my chest, waiting to burn. When I finally stepped onto the porch of that house again, the air felt colder, heavier. As if it remembered me, Isabel opened the door. Her eyes widened, filling with emotions I couldn't name: guilt, relief, maybe even love. She looked older, worn down by the very mother who once smothered her with affection. "Clara," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm here for her," I said. My voice didn't shake, not anymore. Inside, I found my mother sitting in her chair, her hair streaked with gray, her face hard as stone. But her eyes, those sharp, unyielding eyes, flickered when she saw me. "You came back," she said, almost mocking. I laid the documents on the table between us, the photographs, the birth certificates, the proof of everything she had buried. Her face drained of color. For the first time in my life, she didn't look powerful, she looked afraid. "You lied to both of us," I said. My words cut like a blade. "You hated me because I was his. And you loved Isabel because she wasn't yours either. All these years, you built your empire of favoritism on a lie." Isabel gasped, covering her mouth. And my mother, she said nothing. The silence in that room was suffocating. My mother's hands trembled on the arms of her chair, her lips parting as if she wanted to speak but couldn't. Isabel stood frozen beside me, her wide eyes darting between us, her world unraveling with every breath. For years, I had imagined this moment, the day I would finally stand in front of her, not as the unwanted child, but as the one who knew the truth. And now, here it was. "You destroyed us," I said, my voice low but steady. "You turned sister against sister. You gave Isabel a crown that was really a chain. And me, you buried me under your hatred, just because I reminded you of a man you couldn't forgive." Her jaw tightened, but her eyes, they flickered with something I had never seen before: fear. I leaned closer, my words deliberate. "But here's the truth you can't run from. You loved Isabel because she wasn't yours. And you hated me because I was." The words struck harder than I expected. Her face crumpled, years of iron control cracking like glass. Isabel gasped, her hand flying to her chest, the realization hitting her just as cruelly. I gathered the papers from the table and stood tall. "You don't get to define me anymore," I whispered. "Your lies end here." Then I turned to Isabel, offering her the choice my mother never gave us. "Come with me, or stay with her, but whatever you do, know the truth now." I walked out, the door slamming behind me. For the first time, I wasn't the daughter she chose. I was the daughter who chose herself. Thank you for watching till the end. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.